What if you could drive a sports car for as long as you like, have no limit to what you can do with it, and then turn around and sell it for massive profit? I've been blessed enough to be able to do this same thing more times than I can count, and now I want to just share 10 tips with you so you can start driving your own dream cars and make thousands of dollars in the process. What's up? My name is Jamal from Flipping University. I help busy employees build a full-time business flipping cars so that they can build a life of freedom doing whatever they want. This is going to be tips that can work regardless if you're going to be going to the auction to buy these cars or if you're going to be using things like Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp to buy them as well. Either option could work. But for tip number one, the first thing is just going to be making sure that you check the common problems with these cars. Even though this is something that you should be doing with just about any car that you're going to be flipping, it's even more important to be doing this with cars you're going to be flipping that are sports cars, because some of these common problems a lot of times are the reason why these cars are going to be getting sold. And it's even more important, and it's really the most important, to do this with more expensive cars, especially if there's something like exotic cars. A common problem with these exotic cars could literally break the point of you potentially getting profit on the car or you possibly selling the car later and losing money on it. Tip number two is just to buy cars that are very close to stock, if not completely stock. If they do have a little bit of mods, it's not horrible. Let's say if it's like bolt-on mods, like a different exhaust, or maybe just changing out the wheels or something like that. But if it's serious mods, like potentially changing out the turbo, or they changed out the transmission, or they did other really big changes to the car, you should generally just avoid it, because a lot of times at that point you're going to be buying someone else's project completely, and you really don't know how much risk is going to be involved in that. Okay, tip number three, and that's just going to be asking a lot of questions when you're there. Obviously, this is more so for if you're going to a private party to buy the car. I'm going to talk about an option that you could do that's going to help your chances for auction in a second. But when you're in private party, you need to make sure that when you're there, you're asking questions like what the person did with the car, what changes were done, why the person is selling the car, and how they use the car. Let's say if it was potentially used just as a daily driver, or if it was track driven or drifted. Stuff like that really makes a big difference of how you should be checking the car, and really if you should even consider buying it or not. Now for tip number four, this one's going to be primarily for buying it from the auction, but it could be for when you're buying it from private sale too, and that's mainly just trying to get a Carfax from auto check report with it. I did actually put together a video already where I went over free ways that you could potentially even get something like around a full Carfax. If you want to see that, just click into the link in the top. But this is going to be even more crucial if you're buying it from an auction. You know, if you're buying it from an auction, you only know but so much about the car. So if you could potentially see like, all right, there's certain things that were done with the car when you're buying it, or let's say before you're buying it, and you could potentially see like, let's say for the jobs that were done with it and the work that was done, it was done professionally rather than just done as like a DIY mechanic type of work. That can really make or break whether you should go for that car or not. Now for tip number five, is just making sure that you are thoroughly inspecting that car when you get there in person. Of course, I mean, it's a sports car, so you should be expecting that the person was beating on the car. Most people aren't just going to buy sports cars and just drive them around like grandpa's driving some Toyota Camry or something like that to get to work. Usually, you know, if it's a manual car, you want to make sure that that clutch is going to be good. It's a good chance that they might have been trying to do burnouts with it or trying to do drifts or something like that. So make sure you're checking out those main areas like that are probably going to be beat on a little bit more than a regular car. Plus, as well as checking out those common problems that you researched already before you even came to check out the car. For tip number six, making sure that you're not really using stuff like Kelley Blue Book to check the prices. Instead, I would usually rather more so like going to the actual marketplace, let's say Facebook Marketplace or whatever marketplace that car might be posted on a lot, to see what other sellers are actually selling the car for around your area. A lot of times, things like Kelley Blue Book or Carfax or anything like that, sites like that, they don't really have the best prices and the best averages for sports cars or like rare cars like that, especially if it's in a manual transmission. A lot of times Kelley Blue Book or Carfax will actually make the manual transmission version of cars cheaper, even if it's a sports car, whereas realistically, if it's a sports car and it's a manual transmission, a lot of times they can go for a couple $1,000s more than the automatic version. Tip number seven is just for the price that you should be buying the car for. It's the same method that I would usually teach for basically buying any car that you're going to be flipping, and it's mainly going to be working backwards off of the price that you should be selling the car for. So let's say you should be thinking about, all right, how much the car sells for. Let's say the car sells for $5,000. Then thinking about how much profit you want to make off the car. Let's say you want to make $2,000 off of it. You do $5,000, the price to sell, minus the $2,000, which is the amount of profit, and that'll bring you to that final price, which is the price that you should purchase it for, which in this case of that example was $3,000. Of course, if there are things like, you know, different expenses that you have to put into it to get the car ready for sale or anything like that, you should also subtract that in that equation too to find out what that purchase price is. But you should always be doing something like this to find out how much you should be paying for the car, rather than going to a site like Kelley Blue Book to see how much the trade-in value of the car is. Now for tip number 8, hopefully at that point you already purchased the car. Now just for for getting it ready for sale. Obviously, yes, you should be doing things to make the car into good condition if there's any problems with the car. But another big thing is also if there's any mods that's on the car, this is where you should potentially be trying to revert the car back to stock. And what you can do if there is any mods you're going to be taking out, instead of just throwing them out right after that, a lot of times you could also list them up on Facebook or on eBay or anything like that and actually make money off of those parts as well. But you can't assume that just because you might like the car for what it is now with whatever mods it has, whatever person you're going to be selling the car to will also like those mods. A lot of times just keeping it stock is a lot safer to do. Tip number 9 is just to price it competitively. And a lot of times people ask me like, oh, you know, what's some of the best tips for, you know, selling the car faster and stuff like that. And there's a lot of different reasons that a car could sell faster and things that you can do. But one of the best ways that you could sell a car faster is just by making sure that the price is competitive for the people that's around you as well. If someone goes online and sees your car is, let's say, even $500 cheaper than other cars in your area for the same condition, then generally speaking, they're going to see it's a good deal and or they're going to buy the car. Assuming that they're not going to show up to see the car and then the car has thousands of problems more than they were expecting when they first saw it on the description. And actually, just to help you out a little bit more, if you are someone that's going to be going to the auction to keep flipping more cars and potentially even flipping more than sports cars, I did actually put together a full training showing how you can double your income flipping auction cars. So if you do have a day job and maybe you're making $5,000 a month or so, you can actually match that and make another $5,000 flipping auction cars. I give a lot of my best stuff away for free here. If you want access to that training, just go to the link in the description below and you can see everything. And tip number 10 is just, I would say, trying to list the car into groups as well. Not like you can't just list it up regularly for sale, but when you list it up for groups, and especially like groups that are sports car groups and stuff like that, a lot of times those people are going to value the car a little bit more because they might see, all right, if you have like a certain rare type of car that they might have been looking for or waiting for, especially if it's like a manual transmission version of a car or something like that, a lot of times you can get people that could just pay a lot more for the car and potentially make you even more profit at the end of things. And with that, I also want to ask, what is your best car that you flipped that is a sports car? For me, I would say my best one, it was like an Infiniti G37 way back in the day. I believe I got like a good like $3,000 to $4,000 profit off it when it came time to sell. But I want to hear exactly what was yours. To me, this is some of the funnest parts of the job, when you're able to drive cars like this and actually flip them for profit later. But that's everything. Make sure you check out that training if you're looking to flip auction cars, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.